Joining us now, Walid Phares, a Fox News Middle East and terrorism analyst. He's also a former campaign policy advisor to President-elect Trump. Welcome, sir. Good to see you today. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Uma. Thank you.
Well, as we get set to welcome 2017, there are a host of problems facing the new administration. And with Angela Merkel today saying that Islamic terrorism is Germany's biggest test right now and threat, isn't it ironic since she essentially set up the problem in a big way by allowing over 1 million people, 1 million refugees to come into her country. Many of the vetting processes were questioned at the time, and now she stands a big test herself because she could be voted out of office.
Absolutely. I remember myself just before these waves start moving from Syria because, by the way, Europe and the current administration did not address the issue of Syria. So there is some root causes here, but we addressed it at the European Parliament and we warned that the waves are going to come, though they have a humanitarian consideration, are penetrated by jihadists, and Germany felt that, and of course the Chancellor now is trying to say that has nothing to do, meaning I had to do what I had to do in terms of humanitarian duties, but we are now facing that terrorist threat. I think in 2017 there needs to be a different discourse and conversation both in Europe and in North America, I would say even internationally, about how to distinguish, how to make sure that we don't have jihadists in Europe and in the United States.
What do you think that new test has to be?
Well, there needs to be, first of all, a conversation here at home. I mean, I'm bringing it a little bit to Washington between the new administration, which is determined. First of all, the new administration of Mr. Trump, President-elect Trump, names those ideologies. And then second, we have a majority in Congress that wants to do that conversation. And once we have it done, then we're going to have a new national security doctrine. And we go to Europe and talk to the European leaders. And they need us because they have been attacked on and on. And what happened in Berlin or what happened in France are our chief indicators.
Well, during the campaign, Mr. Trump made no secret of the fact that he was very critical of about what was happening in Europe and was very concerned about the terrorism threat. And also blasted for his attempts at saying that he's going to look at extreme vetting from countries where there is a high degree of terrorists coming from those nations.
The old policies, both in Washington and in Brussels, which means the European Union, failed. Otherwise, why are we having all these attacks? And now the intelligence community is telling us that we are conducting investigations in all 50 states, and the Europeans are conducting investigations in all 27 countries that they have. So what did not work before needs to be examined, re-examined, and a new policy and a new strategy has to be devised. And what has been said on the campaign trail basically will become the nucleus of the next policy once it is discussed, debated, and we have a unified position with regard to this policy.
You know, looking at the larger picture over what's happened in the Middle East and Europe, a lot of critics have been saying that the Obama White House essentially looked the other way, did not back countries when they needed help, particularly in terms of what happened in Syria. What do you think what it's going to need to take to regain trust among nations around the world to look at the United States as a real leader and moving forward in a way that they feel that they can count on the U.S. to have their back?
Well, Uma, in your own introduction, you actually answered and allowed me to develop further. We did policies. First of all, we abandoned allies, not just in terms of Israel, but Egypt and the Gulf and other places. And then the administration allied itself or partnered at some point with the wrong people, with the Muslim Brotherhood militias, with some of the jihadists. And then we signed this treaty with the Iranian regime that we call the nuclear agreement, abandoning the Iranian people and abandoning our civil society's friends in the region. So all of that has to be reviewed again, and then we have to move in a different direction, reinstalling a good alliance with our partners in the region on the one hand. On the other hand, we need to signal to our, to the factions in the Middle East that there is a different U.S. policy now, and we're not going to be basically withdrawing from the region. We're going to come back, but with alliances and coalitions.
And really quickly, in the few seconds I have left, what's the legacy of the Obama White House from your perspective, the international legacy?
It is going to be a long time before we determine that, but it is abandonment of our allies and changing the course of how the United States was perceived. The image of the United States is the biggest victim that I can see in the region and in the world.
Walid Phares, good to see you. Thank you so much. Great insight.
Thank you. Happy New Year.